7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have me.
Crazy mother.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Central Oregon Shenanigans. If you're tuning in for the first time, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell. We do a lot of videos, especially with Ford's, automotive, 4x4. We got a lot going on the channel. We got 70s Fords, we've got a 78 Bronco, 78 F-150, Super Duties, OBS Fords, this uniquely swapped 4Bt Cummins Expedition. So yes, please hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you're up to date with the newest videos that we release on this channel. And thank you, all of you new subscribers. We've been gaining a lot lately. Welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about my 2002 Ford Expedition that has a 4BT Cummins turbo diesel swapped into it. This started out life as a 4.6 liter Triton V8. I got it for free back in the day. This has been about 3 or 4 years ago. This came to me with a seized engine. The 4.6 was completely seized, and we're talking full-on breaker bar on the crank. 4-footer, and it wasn't even spinning over. Went ahead and it sat for a long time because the previous owner didn't have the loan paid off all the way on it. So I waited 4, 5, 6 months before getting the title, before I even put any time or money. So it just sat out back of Papa's house for a long time. So yeah, finally the day I got the title, I started calling around. It was hard to find a 4.6 for this truck, and finally when I did find one, it was really low mileage and they wanted a lot of money for it. And it came out of Texas. Got that 4.6 up here, got it unloaded, and immediately found that it had 3 studs broken off in the head. So I wrapped it back up, threw it back in the truck, took it back to the parts house, the LKQ, and said, look, I did not pay $1,600 for an engine that I got to sit there and extract 3 bolts from the head, and I don't know if I can get them out. So with that being said, they took the engine back, I got my cash back. And I told Kyle, I was like, it's time to do a Cummins swap on something. So I started hunting around, doing my research. I spent a good 3 to 4 weeks doing research, looking for an engine. I didn't know what route I was going to take. Originally, I wanted to put a 6BT Cummins in this, a 6-cylinder Cummins with an adapter plate. My buddy had one laying around, and Kyle found one and actually bought it and brought it home as a core engine. We took measurements on that sucker and looked at each other and went, nope, that ain't gonna fit. They won't fit, guys. It is too stubby of a nose, and even with the 4-cylinder in there, yeah, you've got about this much room, but it can be done. If somebody wanted to stuff a 6-cylinder Cummins in one of these, you're looking at tearing your dash out, notching the firewall, probably a good 6 to 8 inches, and you're moving the transmission and transfer case back. Therefore, you're building new drive lines. You cut the firewall. These use the firewall in crashes, so you're jeopardizing the safety of your family on an on-road application like this. That the firewall has been compromised, so you don't want to have a 6BT Cummins sitting in your lot. That wouldn't be fun in a front-end collision. With this system, these mounts are designed, they're going to roll, and this engine's going to drop down if I got in a front-end collision. They're not designed in a way that the motor's gonna pop up and into the cab. So you gotta take that in mind when you build your mounts. Everything behind the 4BT Cummins is stock. So the transmission, which is a 4R70W, it's the smaller of the two transmissions that were put in these. It does just fine. I've towed with it. I've got it warm. I've actually towed more weight than this thing should have even been hooked up to. Papa's Kubota tractor is not light. Tractor and trailer, we're over 10,000 pounds just with that unit. I pulled it for a while until I got to about 210 on the transmission temperature, and I said, okay, that's enough. She did it though. It's a good half-ton setup. This ain't a 1-ton truck like my dually or my 250 flatbed. It's not really this is meant to pull your boat to the lake, or a small trailer with some jet skis or a couple snowmobiles. It's not really meant to go pull the camp trailer to the lake, or I'd pull the boat. The boat's not terrible with it. I pulled the boat with it before, and that's about a 5,000 pound setup, and that's about good. So yeah, the transmission. Before the engine seized, the previous owner told me that the engine or the transmission had already been rebuilt, and I had seen the evidence of that when I was poking around inside there. It's a fresh rebuild. They had it set up for towing. They used to pull a really heavy trailer behind this, I think a camp trailer with this, because they have a brake control setup already in it. So yeah, the transmission's all stock, but with a nice remanufactured rebuilt kit in it. It also has a different torque converter. It's not the same torque converter that would come behind the Triton. This one's more of a heavy duty application for a diesel, and it's got a lower stall. I do believe the Triton came with like a 22, 23, 24, somewhere in there stall, and this has a 1500 stall in it. If we were to leave the Triton torque converter in there, which would bolt up, you would be getting to the end of your RPM range and we would not be locking up. So yes, the transmission is stock. It does do fine with this 4BT Cummins in its setup, and it takes off nice, and the stall is just right. I do believe it's a 1500 stall. The rear axle and the gear ratio of this truck, since it did have the smaller V8, it does have an 8.8, not the 9.5. I do believe that was the second option, the bigger option for these. But yeah, it's got an 8.8 limited slip, 355 rear axle, 355 gears. I do wish I had 373s, but it's really nice. You get on the highway like I-5 and you're doing 80 and you're right at your 2000 RPM, which really this engine likes about 19 to 2000. That's what's sweet spot. That's where she likes to get her good fuel economy at. It's just where she makes a good amount of torque. It just likes to be right around that 1900 to 2000 mark. So if you want to get going, decently down the freeway and get some good fuel economy, perfect gears. I like the 355s for highway. They're not so good for towing. So the 4BT Cummins that's in here, it's mated to that 4R70W with a D-stroked adapter plate. D-stroked.com, I do believe it is. So I've got a D-stroked adapter plate and a D-stroked flywheel flex plate. And those two pieces were very expensive. They actually cost quite a bit of money. And you can't call D-stroked and be like, hey, I want an adapter plate for a 4BT Cummins to a 4R70W or 4R100. They don't make it. Well, they do make it because I have it, but it's not. You have to do your research, and I found that the F250 and 350 with the V10s that had the 4R100, the automatic, it's the same bolt pattern as the Triton V8 and the 5.4 or the 4.6. So I ordered that, fingers crossed, which I already did my research, and a guy that built an F-150, I emailed him back and forth, and I asked him a bunch of questions about these swaps, because I think he was the first one to do the cleanest heritage swap. It's called Mode's Diesel Performance. He doesn't really have too much of a YouTube channel, but he does have a few videos on his build. Not too much information there, but he does do good at responding back. He used to anyway. I asked him, and then I called D-Stroke, and I said, look, I need an adapter plate for a 4R100 V10 truck with that flex plate. Got it, bolted it up, everything works just fine. So yeah, that's got a D-Stroke adapter plate to that transmission. Now, a lot of people ask me this question, how did you make the transmission behave properly? Because if you know, Tritons rev out 5,000-6,000 RPM, and so we went with US Shift. US Shift is on the East Coast. They specialize in the shift kit or the shift computers for this 4R70W transmission and the 4R100 and the E4ODs. So I ordered one of those, not cheap. Had them put a diesel tune on it. Didn't work very well. I had to end up big learning curve on building my own diesel tune for this engine, and I've got it down pretty good now. It took me a long time to actually get a tune that this thing was happy with, the shift points and cruising and locking out gears, and it was a lot. But yes, it's got a US Shift controller with a US Shift wiring harness. You have to buy their wiring harness, and it comes with all the plugs for the transmission. So you unplug your factory wiring harness. I actually just deleted my wires. I kept a few. There was a couple wires I kept, and I can't remember which ones they are, but mainly like the reverse lights, if you want those to come on, your neutral safety switch, all that stuff. You got to find all that down there and tie it in and solder your new harness up. I've got a video of me fixing the harness, and that's also on this channel. There's a lot of, the whole build's on this channel. It's way deep in the archives, but it's all there. So if you're interested in building one of these, you need to go watch all my videos first before you just start typing in, whoa, how'd you do this? Go watch my videos. If it's not in there, then email me at CentralOregonShenanigans@gmail.com. But anyway, so yeah, US Shift controller with the wiring harness, and the wiring harness was a pill, but we got it finally. The only thing that's not hooked up right now, and it can be hooked up, and it's really easy, I just haven't done it, is the overdrive on-off button can be hooked into that controller, and your cruise control buttons. It's the only thing that I haven't really hooked up yet. As far as the engine is it's an early 1990s Cummins off-road application. Now, I didn't have the actual identification badge on my engine, so I don't know the year. I know it's early 90s, and that's about it. And it came out of a drill auger. It popped up on Craigslist one night. I called the guy and said I was jumping in my truck, and I'll be at his doorstep the next morning. And he's like, where are you from? And I'm like, Oregon. He was all the way down in Nevada. So it was a all-night trip. That episode is on the channel as well. Kyle and I jumped in the truck, went down to Reno, Nevada. We only paid $1,200 for this engine, which was a steal. You can't find them for that nowadays. And brought it home, threw it on an engine stand, and started making it an on-road application. So how do we do that? One, the injectors were way too small. The injectors, I called up Pensacola Diesel out of Pensacola, Florida, I do believe. Anyway, it's down in Florida. And had them send me 40 over stock injectors for an on-road diesel. So not the 40 over stock on the off-road injectors, but like if you had an on-road injector, I got 40 over stock. You can go bigger. I just wanted to keep it safe. It's got an H1C turbo. The turbo that came on it was like itty bitty. This one's got a first generation H1C. You can go bigger. You can use different turbos. This one was just really good for this application. It just fit perfect. We took the stock manifold off. I cut a 6BT manifold to fit. That's also an episode. Papa and I took and cut the two outers of a 6BT manifold so that the turbo position was just perfect for the H1C. And then we took the material that we had left over. Anyway, we cut down that manifold, took the extra material, used the material to plug off the ends. Papa heated it up with the torch and then did some beautiful welding on it. No leaks, had no problems with that. Got an on-road injection pump off eBay. Had the biggest nightmare, and it's also back in the archives. The injection pump kept blowing the front seal out, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. I had the injection pump shop up in Portland, had it apart twice. It was beautiful, great shape, gave it a clean bill of health. I'd stick it back in the truck and it would go a block or two down the road and it would push the seal out. Come to find out, I had a clogged return line. It was on that pump, so got it, the banjo bolt plugged up, and that was our problem. So got that all fixed. Haven't had a problem ever since. The braking system in the truck is stock. It's got it's disc front and rear, which is really nice. This thing can stop on a dime. It's got the factory master cylinder in it. The diesels don't make vacuum, so you got to figure that problem out. A lot of guys will buy those hokey, stupid $500, $300 to $500 pumps. They fail within a year. They get dirt in them, and they don't do a very good job, and they're kind of rickety. I, right off the bat, went with a Wabasco air pump, Wabasco, whatever you want to call the name, air pump that came with the first generation Dodges, I do believe. It's an air pump, power steering combo. It's oil lubricated. I haven't had any problem other than the fact that I went cheap and did not have a new line built from the engine block over to the pump, so my line's leaking now and I need to get that repaired. The only thing that we ended up having to make for this whole swap was the engine towers. The engine towers was a complete nightmare, and I almost went insane, but I got them built. Trying to get that engine to sit perfect. You want it to be in there level. You don't want it to be crooked. You know, you gotta have it perfect. It took us a good 3 days, 12-hour days, building the first prototypes, and then I went and built Kyle's in like an afternoon. It was crazy. After I already knew what I had done, I just chop it and go. The throttle linkage also had to be made out of scrap. There was a couple odds and ends here and there that we had to kind of make our own throttle positioning drive line, so that this throttle positioning sensor actually has two sockets that are welded together to actually go on each end of the bolts, and it works beautifully. Kyle and I pressed these two sockets together and had to build this little drive line. That's all in the videos. So, a lot of questions when I bought the dually. They were like, basically, you know, what's going on with the Expedition? The Expedition is currently for sale. If somebody is super interested, it's not like I'm asking $15,000 for this thing. I've got a fairly good price on it. Email me if somebody's interested at CentralOregonShenanigans@gmail.com. There are a few things that haven't been wrapped up. Cruise control, air conditioning. I've got everything in a box. Just need some time to do it. It never got a fan put on it. It's never needed a fan. I do have a full thermostat controlled fan that comes with it. I've got too many projects. I've got this many vehicles, and I only can drive this many. I needed a truck to pull things with, heavy things with, and this wouldn't do it. I tried to convince my wife that she wanted to drive this thing, and that wasn't happening. And I needed a truck, so I bought my dually for pennies on the dollar. I got a really good deal on that truck, and I love my Super Duty. I love the drivability of it. I love how smooth it is. I love the power. I like the fuel economy. This got better fuel economy than my dually, but my dually's not doing terrible on diesel economy. This is a toy. I daily drove this truck for a couple years, on and off, and it's a toy. It takes forever for these four-cylinder Cummins to warm up on a winter day. And when you have kids, it's not a good scenario to have. I'd let this thing idle for 30 or 40 minutes outside before taking the kids to school, and that was annoying. With my 6-liter, I go out there, I fire it up, I come back inside, I put my shoes on, I come back out, and I'm already getting warm heat coming out of my dash. So yeah, it's a fun truck. I liked it. It was a fun build. I just don't have room for it in my life anymore. It's been sitting since August, and I finally just now got a battery. Finally found the fuel leak. I found a fitting that I had not quite got tight enough. We got it tight. The fuel line coming from the tank was loose. Would I do this swap again? No. I would honestly put a V8 back in this. Just a simple fact. These 4-cylinders, Cummins, are weekend warrior engine. They are not for, or a single guy that doesn't have the kids in the family that needs to start up and go to work or go to school and keep the kids warm in the morning. It's hard. This thing doesn't perform as a family rig like I thought it was going to. If I could go back in time, I would have saved this engine for the Bronco, for something else. It is cool. It is unique. I do like it. It just gets just to see people turn and go, what? That guy's got a Cummins and an Expedition. It's fun. But as far as practical and drivability, it's just not there. It's a great weekend warrior. It's a great Sunday truck when the weather's not bad. But it's not, hey kids, let's go to school every morning. It just stinks. It just doesn't warm up fast enough for my likings. And the engine vibrates a lot. And I've put the 6BT dampener on it. I've tried to do different RPMs, adjustments. It just vibrates at an idle. Once you get moving, it's not bad. But when you're sitting there at a traffic light or idling, it vibrates the damn truck to death. It's not horrible, but it's you start up my 7.3 or my 6.0 or even a 6BT. They vibrate a little bit, but nothing like this little monster. It vibrates. It's a vibrating motor. So if somebody's stumbling across this video, make sure you like loud noises or loud engines, and make sure you like vibrations, because you're gonna get them with this, and there's nothing you can do. I heard the manuals are a little bit different because you got a bigger, you've got all that mass of your flywheel, but still Kyle's vibrates, and it's got a massive flywheel on it. So I don't think if I had to go back to tell my past self from the future, hey, you should have built that. It built this channel. I had fun with it, but I would never do it again. I wouldn't do this build again. But it was fun. It's done enough to be driving. Somebody wanted to do some air conditioning in it, I've got the stuff. But let's take a look. A lot of you guys have seen under the hood of this thing, but this is under the hood. I mean, you've only got about my hand from, yeah. You can see why the 6BT would not fit in here. This is good. I mean, you got to add 2 more cylinders. Plus, you got this. If I remember right, if you took all the front pulleys off, the 6BT, the valve cover would sit right about here. If I remember right. With doing all my measurements. You got your on-road pump with this adapter piece. I did buy this adapter piece with this Dodge throttle positioning sensor. And then there's a drive line that we built out of sockets underneath there. To get down to the... That was designed for a different on-road pump for a 6BT. This pump's a little bit different. There's actually 2 styles of pumps, and this is the one that's not the sought-after one. But it wasn't that expensive. I actually didn't pay very much for that pump. It did, however, cost me in the long run with having to run back and forth to Portland. Anyway, it was some injection place up there, and I can't think of it at the top of my head. Alternator wiring harness, we didn't talk about that too much. That is the Triton alternator. I built a bracket for it. There's a bracket that comes off the bottom down there up, and it bolts on with the bolt there. It's very solid, very sturdy. I did have to put a new plug on it. The factory plug, the wiring was just getting corroded, so I actually went down to Ford and bought a plug and wired it in with solder and shrink tubed it. This piece broke, so I did my own connection here. This is the factory wiring harness, though. It is the original to this truck wiring harness. We adapted in to both the heater cores right here. That's in an episode. Intercooling would be possible. Kyle's got intercooler on his, and there's plenty of room right there for an intercooler. Interesting piece right here is you got to take a part of your vacuum system over to your blend door and your knobs on the dash. It hooks in over there. If you don't hook that up, then you can't do defrost and floor and vents and all that stuff. It's somewhere over here. You got to hook that up. So I just teed into the brake booster. Didn't affect anything at all. Works really well. I get a lot of slack or crap for this long tube. I wanted to get the air cone over here to the factory location because there's an actual air duct down here that rams air up to here. So that's why this filter's here. It pulls better outside air than having your pulling warm air off the radiator right in here. That's why this long tube's here like this. I was gonna scuff it down. I need to actually paint this. I need to paint that yellow piece still. New boots, new clamps. I could never hunt down the single piece, so I ended up just having to use mine and had to build my own piece over there for the intake, for the boost. All these wires up here do have a purpose. Running your, I forgot to mention about the D-stroke tack kit. I called D-stroked and had them send me that tack kit. It's very expensive, but it functions as the tachometer. The tack on the dash, factory tack, still works. All the gauges still work in this. It has all the sensors. The oil sensor from the Triton motor is into this engine, and the temperature sensor is also adapted and put in. Get your temperature sensor with the factory wiring harness right here, and same with the oil sending unit down on the side of the block. I can't show you because I can't get to it today without removing things, but it's down there, I promise. I just bought stuff to adapt those into the engine, and then just left those plugs from the wiring harness. I deleted everything else, the fuel injection, all that. The wiring harness got deleted and is gone. But as far as, and then I found 12 volts of power from the factory wiring harness to excite your pump. So yeah, and I tried to leave it as factory as possible. And if I had to cut and splice stuff, we did it, you know, we didn't do butt connectors. We did at the beginning just to find things, and then we went back through. I think I did that on an episode. Cleaned all the butt connectors up with all solder and shrink tubing. So this happened last summer. I'm gonna get in there and pop the dent out. It's not getting fixed. It's just gonna get popped out. It does have a clean title still. I bet if you plugged in, I've never got around to removing the light for the check engine light, but got her set up a little high on the idle right now to warm her up today. It's freezing cold outside. Yeah, all your knobs still work. Hear the blend door back there. 4-wheel drive still works. There's your usshift.com quick shift. I never mounted this somewhere. I was gonna mount it like right there. I don't know, I just never found a good spot to mount that, so it just sits out right there. This guy tells you a lot of different things though. It's not just a transmission controller. You got your speed sensor, you've got throttle positioning sensor, it's got transmission temperature, 95 degrees, tachometer. It bounces a little bit, but for the most part it tells you right where you're at. Battery, charging at 14. Line pressure for your transmission, 107 PSI. Table, we're in table 1 for shift control. You can program up to 3 or 4 tables in this controller. So if you have like maybe a race tune or a tow tune or a short shift tune or whatever you want to do, you can build your tunes and load them in here. Don't know what that stands for. SRE, I think that's all your trouble. No, SRE 40103. I can't remember what those are all for. I'd have to go back in the manual, and then you can shut the screen off if you want. I always leave it on stats. It tells me if I'm in park. Reverse. If I'm towing something, I'll turn on the transmission temperature. The truck has a 4-inch exhaust, MagnaFlow exhaust system off of a Mega Cab. I do believe I bought a Mega Cab exhaust system and made it work from a newer 2000s Dodge. Well, there you have a update on the 2002 Ford Expedition. She's still here. She's running really good. I've spent the last few hours today working on her this morning, fixing some little knick-knacky things. She's ready to go on a long road trip if I wanted to. If I wanted her to, I could jump in the truck right now and head for the hills. So I think I do need to do an oil change on it though. But guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give this video a big thumbs up. Comments do go down below. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell. Until next time, see you here on Central Oregon Shenanigans. Bye bye guys.